I am Vadim Karpiak. My colleague is Olena Froliak. And now we will repeat the experience of 3 years ago, an interview with the President and the First Lady. Ms. Olena, Mr. Volodymyr, good afternoon.
Good morning, everyone.
We met 3 years ago. You were then a presidential candidate, 3 months in Ukrainian politics, and I started the interview with the question, how do you feel during these 3 months in Ukrainian politics? You said 2 things. That people are not what you thought they were, and that you have come to value your family much more.
I don't even remember that.
And we all remember.
Television remembers everything.
3 years have passed. Today is the anniversary of your inauguration. The country is at war. You became the Man of the Year, according to the readers of the authoritative magazine Time. Now, after 3 years in all this experience, how do you feel in Ukrainian politics, and even in world politics?
As for me, I believe that for me today there have been no major changes in values and priorities. For me, great world politics is, first of all, Ukraine's place in the world, and it is true. Three years ago it was more of a dream. I had no political experience at all at that stage, let alone diplomatic experience. And today I understand what place Ukraine deserves to occupy. I am fighting for this place together with our people and together with our army. Because in this war we are fighting not only for our territories and not only for our whole land, but we are also fighting for a place in the world for our prosperous country. You see, we do not want us, sorry for such a comparison, to get stuck in the teeth of great empires. We are definitely not an empire, and I really like and impress this fact. We are another state. We have a completely different mentality. And even if we had that opportunity, we don't want to be an empire. Ukrainians have the same attitude. There can be anything outside our borders. The main thing is that everything is fine with us. Harmony, peace, all family members at home at the same table, and peace and order in the country. Diplomats are fighting for the most important place of our state at the world level. Their main task is to defend a worthy place for our state among equals. And this is the most important course of our country. As a result, it will have a positive effect on our relations with the European Union, or with certain defense alliances, or security guarantors. But this is different. I mean, these are the results of our consistent policies. And despite the war, I see this sequence, we are following this path. And I believe that today one of the results of this policy is the title of Man of the Year. I want to note that this is the title of all Ukrainians. It is our Ukrainians who are the people of the year. And all this is the merit of the unification of our country. Therefore, all the medals, orders, prizes, names of streets or squares that are addressed to me, in fact, are not addressed to me, but to all those people who defend our state, each in his place, who is in the rear and who is armed. This is a very important point. A very important point is the difference between citizens and society. Society is here, and citizens, someone left, someone changes the passport. But all these are other things. I do not want to characterize them. That was not the question. I answered for so long, sorry. What has changed? And the answers have probably changed.
I hear that your answers have changed.
I agree with you, a lot of things have changed. And I'll tell you honestly, I'm enjoying the moment right now. What happened yesterday has already passed, and we do not know what will happen tomorrow. But at this very moment I am next to my wife, We are sitting with you. The Kyiv region is deoccupied. We are defending Donbass. That is, next to the usual things for me there are strategic things, for me as a person and as a president. And I'm trying to get all the positive emotions that are there at the moment. But, of course, I get pleasure only from the positive results of our state, because I cannot get pleasure from the fact that someone is blocked, someone is injured, someone died, and so on. But I live today. The most important thing is that I began to see better. That is, over the years I began to see a little worse when it comes to small things, but big things, such as what will happen next, what we want. I think these things I basically began to see.
Ms. Olena, in an interview 3 years ago, you were not happy with your husband's idea of running for president. It is unproductive to regret something. A lot has changed in 3 years. The war began. What are your feelings now? What changed in your family's life after the war? And how have you changed personally?
I remember our conversation and I can explain why I had such emotions then. It seems to me, like any woman, that I understood that our family, the two of us, and my husband were facing great challenges, which we would have to fight and live with. And of course, like any person who wants peace, I really did not want such changes. But I also understood that he could handle all the trials. I just knew it was going to be hard. It was not easy, and now, of course, not easy. No one knew 3 years ago that the worst ordeal awaited us was the war that had begun. And I can't say that much has changed since the beginning of this war. As he was a reliable man and a good man, so he remained. His beliefs have not changed, his point of view does not change. And the family, of course, like all Ukrainian families, is now separated.
Your war has practically taken away your husband.
No one will take my husband, not even the war. But yes, he lives at work. We hardly see him. We haven't seen each other in 2.5 months, have we? We talked only by phone. Now we have had several opportunities to see each other, and I am also grateful to you for this opportunity, because we are now spending time together.
Dating on air.
Yes, goodbye. Thank you. This is, a great opportunity to drink tea together.
The magic of television.
The magic of television. Thank you for that. I will not say that our family has changed. Maybe I've changed? That's what you can say. I do not notice.
You are beautiful.
You look very good.
Thank you very much. That is, we, like everyone in this difficult time, hold on, all is well. The same is true in our family. Unfortunately, we can't sit down, have dinner with the whole family, talk about all things, plan something.
We talked on the phone that we were both having dinner. You just couldn't share everything with me.
So we have dinner on the phone.
But I have a feeling that you hid something from me and ate something delicious, and I did not eat it, I think.
It's all a joke. You see, everything is fine, we're kidding. But we are really waiting for it to be possible to reunite, like all families in Ukraine who are separated now, who are waiting for their relatives who want to be together again.
Before moving on to some of these important military matters, because I would also like to ask about them, Mr. President, what are you most proud of during your presidency to date?
What am I proud of?
The most in these 3 years.
I think this is constant respect for our people. And these are not just banal words. And it's not just about war. Our people showed themselves at their best and in peacetime. People are the environment, they are the ones you see, who are for you and for whom you are. And our people are the best. I have always believed in Ukrainian people, always. And the strength of our people during this war is another indisputable and most important proof not only for me but for the whole world that we have indomitable people, strong in spirit. And that's what I'm definitely proud of. Yes, I'm proud of that, I'm really proud of that.
I will ask differently.
2 more things.
2 more?
I asked about 1.
About 1? Then everything.
I will formulate the question differently. What is your biggest achievement in the last 3 years?
It's really hard for me to say. It has always been so. It is difficult for me to talk about myself, my actions or the actions of those around me. This is very difficult to say. It seems to me that only any result should and can be evaluated. When you have reached the end, done everything in your power, and completed your work in full, the result of your work becomes obvious. And it is possible to estimate it. If we talk about the war, about what has happened and is happening now, we need to end hostilities, liberate the country from invaders, reach the end, despite the warm and so mild spring weather outside our windows. Outside our windows we see a peaceful sky, but we do not see what is happening outside the windows in other cities. And there is a real, terrible war. Life continues in our Kyiv region, which was liberated from the invaders. But from various sources of information we can learn that the war in Ukraine continues. We will be able to see the result and appreciate what we are doing only when the war is over. I think that's how it will happen.
This is reasonable. So it doesn't make sense to ask about your mistakes, because we don't know if it will be a mistake or not. You started talking about people, and I'd like to ask you something about them. I started the conversation by saying that after 3 months in Ukrainian politics, you saw that people may not be what you thought they were. Now people are our greatest value. You find yourself in a situation where there are very few people left who started working in politics with you. Why did this happen?
And in my opinion, this is a great result. Really. First, it is always in my priorities to achieve the desired result. And it is much easier and more pleasant to do it with your like-minded people, with people who have the same life values. And the fact that I had to say goodbye to many people shows that now I have like-minded people next to me. Second, politics changes people. I do not want to use this banal word, nepotism, but nevertheless I really believe that there are no very close and very foreign people in politics. Politics is changing the situation and we need to adjust quickly. You have to run. The war also changed the situation. Not all people ran away. Someone ran the other way. Someone has decided to flee abroad, or may still be fleeing. But I am sure that, above all, these people are fleeing from themselves, not from Ukraine. I'm sure of it. And the most reliable remain in the country. Some people even surprised me. They stayed here, we worked together. They surprised me by not leaving our country and the position they hold, and we are now working side by side with them. I don't think there's anything wrong with showing weakness. Or maybe it's not weakness, but adequacy. I can't assess these actions adequately now, because we don't know how it will end. I am sure that victory awaits us. I believe in this from the first day of the war. We are following this path, to victory. And there is no crossroads, and there are no alternatives, and there is no topic for discussion. We have only one goal: victory. Even as we travel to the European Union, we use different paths and approaches because all people are different. And in this case, our diplomats join the work. But in the war with Russia we have only one way. So I understand why people leave the country. This is influenced by politics, war, values and, probably, time. Time changes people. And people change and leave you.
Vladimir Alexandrovich, I want to return to the topic of war and I want to mention something.
Maybe you were expecting something else?
Names?
No, it's not about last names. There is only one discrepancy. You say that politics changes people, and Ms. Olena says that you have not changed. Haven't you changed just for her?
Maybe I'm not a politician.
You are not completely a politician.
Don't you feel like a politician?
I definitely feel like a president.
That's a great answer. It seems to me that your great advantage is that you do not fully feel like a politician. Especially now, when the country is at war. But let's go back to the time when you became a politician.
Fine.
I remember, Volodymyr Alexandrovich, what you said while standing on the high rostrum. We did not start this war, but we must end it. Then you believed that it could end diplomatically. Today, when a large-scale war is going on, it is clear to us that we will not win it through diplomacy, but only on the battlefield. When did you realize that? And why can't we win diplomatically?
When did I feel it? If possible, I will not answer this question for you today. I know exactly when I realized what choice I made. I know exactly my attitude to different things and I know exactly what I was preparing for. Therefore, I believe that this question should not be answered today. But, nevertheless, the meaning of the words you just mentioned has really changed. We did not start this war, but we must end it, is true. I can repeat them word for word today. But their content will be different. That's right. We did not start this war, but we must end it. I really thought that the war could be ended purely through negotiations. I understand that the end of this war will also be diplomatic. The very end. But, unfortunately, I thought that these were negotiations that had an appropriate deadline. I thought that through negotiations we would be able to find answers to many questions and make many decisions together with the Russian side. I really thought so. But, unfortunately, this situation can be compared to a car that does not run on gasoline and it is not an electric car. This is a hybrid. That is why this war is so difficult, and victory will be very difficult. Victory will be bloody. We will definitely get it in battle. But everything will end with negotiations. I am sure of this, because there are some things that we will not be able to resolve except through negotiations. Because we want to regain all our territories, and the Russian Federation does not want to give everything away. It does not want to give anything away. That is why the end of the war will be like this.
I remember that in the days before the war, you were a little nervous when Western intelligence advised you to prepare for an invasion and said that everything would be very difficult. You replied that you should not spread panic, you have everything under control. Did you really not believe that the war would start?
At that time we were already at war.
Large-scale war.
Yes. We lived in a constant war that was completely hybrid. Even before that, there were many attacks and cyberattacks and so on. We understood from which territories this was done. You remember that the websites of the National Bank and ministries did not work due to the attacks. I don't want to talk about the pressure on law enforcement and our intelligence. It was long before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We understood what was happening, preparation. But the scope and arrogance of what we saw, no one fully understood. It's one thing when you understand that tanks will probably come from Belarus. And it's another matter when Russia attacks Ukraine through Belarus. And it's a different matter when rockets fly from Belarus. It seems that the difference is small, and as if we were warned, there were reports that from the other side the offensive could begin. But the difference is big. Who are you at war with? Are you at war with the forces and means that are on the territory of Belarus, which cross Belarus and go to Ukraine, or are you at war with two countries? The devil is in the details. Therefore, no one knew until the end what was happening. And all the information provided to us by intelligence was not entirely true. Because no one knew the details. Everyone was preparing for various events. We conducted our own preparatory activities, various reconnaissances of our partner countries, their activities. All countries responded to these warnings. But no one had more details than we knew and possessed. Nobody had. Everything that intelligence told us happened. And nothing more than that. We can discuss all this, to be honest, for hours, and remember how it happened. But I believe that this offensive began in October, to be honest. And here we can remember how we prepared, and what happened, and what were the messages, and what were the first steps: economic, financial, cyber, blocking and shortage of gasoline, and how it happened, reducing energy, and so on. And it all started in September to October. Although, in principle, it would be fair to start with the 2014 year. But if we are talking about a full-scale invasion, then I think it all started in the fall.
But the large-scale offensive began on the 24th of February. Now Ukrainians, when they meet, ask each other, "Where were you when the war started?" Some were on Kilimanjaro, others in Mexico, and still others at home. I got a call from work, and I used to make coffee at 4 in the morning. War, not war, and coffee should be drunk. Do you remember that fourth hour of the morning of the 24th of February? Can you two talk about the first emotions, the first call?
We are the third. We were not on Kilimanjaro, we were at home.
I was also at home.
And I was at home too.
If we were all at home, who was on Kilimanjaro?
There are such heroes.
Well, at 4 in the morning we don't usually make coffee. I definitely don't drink it that early.
I remember waking up from the strange sounds outside the window, probably like everyone else. It was dark then, almost night. I looked around and saw that Vladimir was not around. I went to the next room and found him there. He was already dressed, in a suit, but without a tie. I asked him, "What's going on?" He just said, "It started." The emotions that overwhelmed me could not be accurately conveyed. It was both horror and numbness. And Vladimir left after this short phrase. And after that, we can say that we did not see each other for a long time. And, to be honest, I understand that he was very tense at the time. We all immediately realized that life had changed forever. And now I'm really looking forward to him telling me it's over. Everyone is waiting for victory.
Everyone is waiting for this.
I believe that I will not be the first to hear these words from him, because he is now constantly at work. So I want to hear it with others, at least on television. You say?
I'm sure of it. These people will tell you. All information passes through them, through television. We could hear explosions. Olena is absolutely right. At that moment I was absolutely ready. I was going to go out. I was warned before these explosions that we heard. I received the signal a little earlier, when the shelling had just begun. Although, perhaps, even earlier. All our government services have been waiting for the attack for some time before. Intelligence and the military were already on the alert. They monitored the area from which there could be a risk of attack. That's why I was informed as soon as the preparations for the shelling began. And as soon as I received the signal, I immediately went to work. Olena, in principle, has already told everything. But I remember saying that it was necessary to calmly explain to the children that the war had begun without inventing anything. Because everyone needs to understand how to behave during war. I remember that before that I returned home very late, because there was a meeting of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. And there we discussed these issues, and all the documents were prepared and a structure was developed for what we would do. We understood that if war broke out, the state should work as a single organism. Everyone should be in their positions to ensure the financial structure. We also did some things in advance, regarding the state bank and state reserves. That is, so to speak, everything was safe. We understood the risks and developed a plan of action in advance. It seems to me that these measures were taken the day before the war. But I don't remember exactly now, to be honest.
Did Olena tell the children about the war?
Yes, of course. I had to explain this to them when I woke them up at 4 in the morning and said, "Just in case, let's pack up." But they even surprised me. There were no tantrums. I tried to be energetic and cheerful, as if nothing terrible had happened. And they followed all my instructions quickly and disciplinedly, quickly collecting things. Of course, after a while it became clear that we can't even imagine seeing Dad again. That's why we all cried several times. But now the children are trying not to lose heart. They know that their father does not give up, and they will not give up.
Mr. President, since we talked about the 24th of February, how ready were we in the military sense for this day? Because, for example, I live in Bucha, and it came as a surprise to me how quickly Russian troops found themselves in Bucha. In fact, near Kiev, it is a few kilometers to the capital. Were we ready for that?
In terms of the size of the forces used by the Russian Federation, which used absolutely everything, even reserves, as well as the so-called silent mobilization. That is, it was not loud, it was a secret, because mobilization is an open hint of war. And they could not declare war on us and called it a military operation. Therefore, we know that there was this secret mobilization and they sent many troops to the Crimea, to Belarus in different directions. And the only area where we have not seen a large concentration of troops is Transnistria. And we knew about everything else. Nothing special happened along the borders of Ukraine. There was the same concentration of troops as a year ago, and it did not increase. They moved away, approached, they had rotations and so on. Their number was considerable. I believe that today no European country would be able to cope with such a volume. It is difficult to assess how they came. Although the military and analysts have always said that Ukraine will not be ready if it is a full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation. Why so? Because our territory is 28 times smaller than the territory of Russia. But still our country is large, and you cannot concentrate all your efforts only, for example, near Kiev, when you are attacked by a large army. We still need to think about air defense, tanks and other equipment. The professionalism of the military is of great importance. We are very grateful for the territorial defense, but there is still a difference between professional soldiers and insufficiently trained servicemen. Everyone understands this. And all this number of people and equipment are spread all over the territory. Of course, there are not enough servicemen. To protect our territory, we need at least 250,000, or even 260,000 people, and we had only 120,000 combat troops. So at the beginning of the 22nd year, I signed an order to increase the army by 100,000 the following year. And it doesn't matter if there is money in the budget or not. As it turned out, we need it vitally. But even these extra 100,000 could not stop the enemy. They could not. Today our country is protected by only 700,000. And in 3 months you see the result of the work of 700,000 people who are fighting and defending our vast territory. And here it should be noted that this is the number at the time of the war. This is what happened as a result of the invasion. Of course, if we were given help immediately, the destruction of infrastructure and human casualties would be much less. I do not want to discuss NATO now. But there are weapons in NATO countries that could help us close the skies from the first missiles launched into our territory. They have Patriot, serious air defense and so on. But they did not help us. Panic broke out in the country, people began to flee, threw their cars on the roadside, created traffic jams. All this was beneficial to the enemy. Therefore, to the question of whether it was possible to prepare for this war, I will answer as follows: that we were well prepared. The enemy did not know about many of our surprises, which we prepared for him, but later he learned about them. However, you probably remember that at that time all analysts believed that the Russian army would capture our country in 2 or 3 days. This is a known fact. Almost everyone thought so then.
Military analysts need to review their methods of analysis.
Everything has already been reviewed, everything has been prepared. We have had to study military affairs in depth, and our American partners, when they receive lists of our needs from us, clearly understand that we understand this issue in detail. We need a lot of money not only to re-equip our equipment and weapons, but also to switch from Soviet weapons to NATO weapons. This is very difficult if you are not a member of NATO, because in this case you do not have a license, so no one will sell you weapons. It was all before the war. Some advised us to dig trenches. But digging trenches cannot be opposed to a country like Russia. Because it is impossible to win the war with a shovel. And that's why we asked for weapons. And they heard us.
Now US military analysts are talking about re-evaluating their system of work. Only one of the American intelligence services was able to predict the fierce resistance of Ukrainians. If we have already talked about the war, may I ask about Mariupol? Everyone is worried about the fate of our defenders, because everyone is watching them now. I understand that not much can be said for the safety of these people, but still, if anything can be said, please say so.
One thing is for sure, they are absolutely heroic people. But let's not forget, please, that there is not only the National Guard, because the National Guard was constantly and everywhere talked about. I want to emphasize this. On the territory of Azovstal there are 400 more border guards. Many of them were wounded and killed, but 400 remain on the territory of the plant. Paratroopers, police, and even representatives of the security service of Ukraine. In addition, a large number of medics, military medics, and ordinary locals remain in the city. And now we can say without a doubt that all these people are real heroes. How and what happened there is a question that will be answered later. But all these people are real fearless defenders of Mariupol. A very large number of people died. Unfortunately, many of our brave pilots died, and they are also very heroic people. They knew how difficult it was to get to Azovstal, almost impossible, and still tried to do so to deliver medicine, food, and water to the defenders of Mariupol. The bodies of the dead had to be removed and the wounded transported to provide them with proper medical care. It all happened there. No one could comment. You ask, why? Because there were no air corridors to Azovstal, due to the deployment of a powerful Russian air defense. Russia controlled the sky. So we asked for help to close the sky. We constantly asked for help. We were not afraid of their planes, although they are also dangerous. But we saw that their pilots were also afraid to take off, because they also died. The main issue was their air defense system and their missiles. It was impossible to just approach Mariupol. For many weeks, helicopter pilots tried to reach Azovstal, knowing that 90% of them did not return. Imagine that despite this, our pilots still flew there. They sat at the helm, risking their lives to deliver food, water, weapons and pick up wounded soldiers to people stranded at the plant. Many of our pilots died. I think they are all real heroes. And so, when we talk about Mariupol, I want us to mention all these people. And what's next? And then the evacuation. To date, all civilians have been deported, those who were trapped at the plant, and the evacuation of other civilians who were in the city itself, has begun long ago. The medics have already been taken out, the seriously wounded have been taken out and the wounded have been taken out. And at this very moment, during our conversation, I know this for sure, there is also an evacuation. I think that in the near future the removal of all will be completed. Let's hope so. We hope that with the help of intermediaries, which will be our Western partners, there will be a complete unblocking. I appealed to the leaders of Turkey, Switzerland, Israel, and France for help in negotiations with the Russian Federation, when we saw that it was impossible to unblock by military means. Honestly, believe me, I have discussed this issue dozens or even hundreds of times in detail with the leaders of other states and asked them to provide appropriate weapons to our servicemen in order to reach Mariupol by military means and unblock our people. And people who were willing to take part in this operation, they were also 90% sure that they could not return alive. And by the way, there were many such volunteers, absolutely heroic, who wanted to risk their lives to unblock their comrades. But we have what we have. To date, the guys in Mariupol have received a signal from the military that they have every right to leave and save their lives. Our servicemen and the military command conveyed these words to all those blocked at Azovstal. The mediator, along with the countries I mentioned above, were also representatives of the United Nations. We agreed with the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. And today our servicemen from Azovstal have already been evacuated, and everything will depend on the role of the UN, the Red Cross and the Russian Federation. And it now depends on them whether our guys from Mariupol will be safe. What happens next? And then they will expect a format of exchange. That is, for today, I think, the process led by our intelligence will end. It is a process of evacuation, withdrawal and preparation for dialogue and exchange of prisoners of war. This is exactly what you have already asked today about whether there are other diplomatic ways to resolve the conflict than the military. There are moments in the war in which diplomacy must work as well. Of course, we will take them home. This is what we have to do together with our partners, who also took responsibility.
With regard to diplomacy, you have repeatedly emphasized your readiness to meet with Vladimir Putin. What is the purpose of this meeting? Do you believe that this meeting can end the war?
I think, depending on when the meeting will take place. The goal is changing. War is a hybrid war, and there will be the same hybrid world, hybrid meetings. For example, if we held a meeting today, the issue of Mariupol would be one of the key ones. We will meet 2 or 3 months after that. Maybe this issue will no longer be, and maybe it will still be relevant, and maybe in part, and so on. If we had met at the beginning of the war, the conversation would have been different. We understand the situation in Ukraine. If we meet today, we will discuss the occupied territories. We do not know what the situation will be in 2 months. We can predict what we will do and predict the outcome, but it will not give us 100% information about the future. This is no longer reality, because our reality is here and now. And so our key points are to address issues of exchange, of deoccupation, of peace and stopping the war. That's all our goals. They were like that in the beginning. Perhaps they were not so specific, because there was no specifics in the results of the current war. Today, when there is one or another specific, we understand the threats, risks, how many people and where they are. We understand that a lot depends on us, but a lot also depends on Russia. Without talking to them, we must state the result in which we are. We have achieved certain goals. We stopped at what we have achieved. We stand or shoot. Tomorrow, for example, we will be covered by artillery shelling. We will retreat, and the day after tomorrow we will go on the offensive again. Of course, we have our desires and our goals. Yes, we want to return our territories and end this war, but how all this will be and when it will be, unfortunately, depends on when we talk to Putin. I think that Ukraine's dialogue with Russia will take place, but it is unknown in what format, with or without mediators, in a wide circle or at the level of presidents, whether it is a bilateral conversation or with the participation of other countries and diplomats from both sides. I will give you an example. Do I talk a lot? No, I don't say much.
No, you can.
Thank you. For example, security guarantees are an important contract, document, and a very important condition for it to be more than just a fictitious piece of paper. He must really work and help us, our children, other people, leaders of the state in the future. That this document became the basis for the security of the state and society of Ukraine. Today, we are considering a number of security guarantees for partner countries that we trust. We are developing a project together with them, we have partially developed it. We like some of its elements, some. We as Ukrainians want too much, and they as Europeans are too skeptical, so somewhere on the edge of our interests we will find an answer that is very important to us, because we need ratification in the parliaments of the guarantor countries to support the international treaty. We want again, we really want. This is our goal, a separate agreement. Today, everything has come to the point that the agreement provides for a circle of partner states around Ukraine without Russia. Russia should not be among the guarantors of security. Bucha has changed some things. Time also changes the attitude to some things, and not even where we are moving, but how Russia has behaved. Who is ready to sit at the negotiating table, and who is not? Different situation every day, it all depends on the time. Today we have one agreement that is currently being considered. And there should be a separate bilateral conversation with Russia, with the President of the Russian Federation. What will happen after we sign it and what will be the final version of this agreement, we'll see. There will be a meeting or not, there will be the result of terrible Mariupol. Or we will go to Mariupol or Volnovka in Donetsk region and see 5 paintings similar to Bucha, God forbid, or maybe it will not. How they, for example, will behave with the defenders of Mariupol. I said when there was a bombing, if they destroy people who were on Azovstal, there will never be any dialogue with Russia again. Today we see. They gave the opportunity, so to speak, found a form, to save the lives of these people, and they took them out. Then there will be an exchange. A lot also depends on the results of these processes. That's what I mean. Therefore, it is difficult for me to say what we will talk about and what issues to address. In general, I have an understanding, and I have answers to the most difficult questions about Donbass, but these are my answers. And we need to know the answers of others.
You speak about the daily situation in your addresses, Mr. President. And I, as a journalist, as an editor and as a citizen, want to thank you because they are sincere, frank, emotional. But I have a question for your wife.
Very good.
I will tell you frankly. I always listen to the president. Your last speech was in Cannes. I opened the phone in the morning, read and listened to the whole speech. Really candid, emotional and human words. The world is very complicated now, it is not ready to listen and call a spade, but you can do it. Ms. Olena, I remember you said in an interview at the time, well, I probably won't be Mr. President's speechwriter, but I will be able to edit the texts. So I want to ask, do you edit them?
No, I do not edit. It seems to me that I would not be able to do this anymore, because their work has already reached such a large size. I may not even have had time to physically process such a volume of work. And I don't even want to do that anymore. It seems to me that everything is getting better and better anyway. Of course, we can argue about some literary things.
We can. We even argue sometimes.
Sometimes some tricks are not enough for me. And sometimes there are
too many. It seems to
too
me that
many.
everything is fine with the receptions right there.
Then too much. It was possible not to use this metaphor here. Too many examples. You could put 3, not 7. Very long. Tight. Stop. But all this is happening after the speech. We are discussing what has already happened. I think I have other important missions. I see that they are doing very well with the team.
So the texts don't show you yet?
No. And I don't even have that opportunity. I think that Volodymyr himself does not always see all the texts in advance. But he always monitors how this work goes. I think this is the right form and approach. He always tells speechwriters what he wants to say. Thoughts are formulated that just need to be put on paper, and then you can edit them quickly. Nobody writes for the president what he has to say. This has never happened before. And that's why he doesn't need my help, because it's his opinion, not mine. I might be able to arrange them somehow, but it would have taken me longer than his assistants.
Do you find it difficult to give these speeches?
It is important for me not to express other people's opinions. It has always been important for me to understand well what I am doing. I'm not a mechanism. I'm not a robot. I can't do everything on my own. And, of course, I don't have time to write complete speeches. But I spend a lot of time on the most difficult appeals, in comparison, with other examples. It is important for me that all my thoughts are conveyed. I believe that the idea of a speech is also the number one task. The team, to be honest, is small. Usually one or a maximum of 2 people help me prepare for a speech. We don't need more people. Because a lot of people are a lot of opinions. And the task before us is how to convey my thoughts, and this is possible thanks to joint, coordinated teamwork. A competent speechwriter must first gather information, process it, and compose a text. For example, he was tasked with writing a report on the work of the cabinet of ministers or a ministry. First he needs to get all the data and numbers, arrange them correctly and communicate them to people so that it is clear. Our people are smart, but here the information will be very relevant, and it is sometimes difficult for an untrained person, not a specialist, to understand it, if the profession is not related to energy, agriculture, etc. Therefore, the speechwriter should not explain each term as a small child, but choose the right words to make everything clear.
We understand what you were talking about. Because your daily appeals are also work. And we, as people who work with information, understand that there is a fruitful day, and sometimes there is nothing special to say. How do you cope then? You need to go out in the evening and tell something.
I believe that I work every day and do not rest. So, I definitely have something to say. But you are right. Sometimes there is really nothing to say in the news, because there is no news.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
If there is no news, then nothing has happened. For me it is happiness.
This is good news.
Yes, this is very good news. When there is no news, this is the best news. Today, when there is a war, it is so. But there is a lot of other work. I think that sometimes you can announce the results of this work. For example, when you did something in a week and got the result today. Something definitely comes up that you need to talk to people about. Another story that is psychologically important. I'm here like you. We appeal to people. They understand where you are, that nothing happened. Because I think so. If I hadn't spoken for 2 or 3 days, people could live with it, no doubt. But there would be many questions. Where did the president go? Is something happening in the country? And this destabilizes the situation. So you need to talk to people, and even if there is no very important information, share current information. However, it is important to communicate with people. At least today, until we win.
Exactly, to victory. We believe in her.
I want faster. I don't have that many appeals.
I think we will handle the appeals. I want to talk a little bit about the psychological aspect. Ms. Olena, I recently interviewed a doctor. We talked in particular about women. And I asked her how to keep women healthy, because a lot of women face trials. The doctor replied that women should be healthy, because it has historically been the case that we have to solve a lot of problems. How would you assess the role of Ukrainian women in this war?
I want to say at once that I have always highly valued the Ukrainian woman. I think our women are the best. There are 2 million more of us in Ukraine. Of course, women are everywhere. Women fight in the armed forces, women volunteers, women doctors, teachers. Most of the people who work are women. There is a lot that we women do outside of our professional activities, and above all it is children. We all have to take care of them now. The education system has been reformatted. And now every child needs to be fed. Lessons need to be learned with every child. And all this is also done mainly by women. We feel it all. I'm sure society sees it. And after the victory we will remember the heroism of our women.
And we do not forget.
And we will already insist that the regulations on the wage gap that are currently in force be changed. Necessarily.
Gender differences.
In some places the difference is 20%. Therefore, I would like to remind you that we dealt with this issue before the war. And I am sure that after the victory we will return to him. And this will no longer be just a rhetorical topic for discussion, but it will be a necessity. Because we have to show that we have won this victory together. I would like to address the topic of health separately. This is also a very important topic. And now I'm starting a big project about it. This is a national program of psychological health of Ukrainians. Because I don't want to think badly prematurely. I don't want to talk about the terrible consequences of the war, but we are all getting psychological pressure. Almost all of us, I'm sure, can have psychological problems, both during and after the war. There are certain parts of the population that are most affected by the war. Children, the elderly and people who have lost their homes, who have lost loved ones, as well as, of course, servicemen returning from the war. The consequences of hostilities are primarily post-traumatic stress disorder, which awaits a large number of people. So now we must do everything possible for the global system of psychological care. Honestly, we should have started it yesterday. Otherwise, we will have very bad consequences not only immediately after the war, but possibly 10 years from now. All these bad consequences await us if we do nothing now. That's why we've started a lot of work on this. We have the support of the World Health Organization. We receive assistance and expertise from countries that are deeply involved in this issue. For example, there are excellent protocols in the United States, in Israel, that work a lot with military trauma. And the first thing we are starting to do now is to audit the existing system. We need to understand the critical points on which we need to focus. On the one hand, we are faced with a big problem, and on the other hand, We are lucky that psychological health is now a major topic in almost all discussion platforms around the world. After the COVID pandemic, this problem rose to a higher level. Again, imagine. We survived a pandemic, and now we have a war. Our country needs as much help and work in this direction as possible. I associate these events with women, because it is women who suffer in most cases. Even if they do not suffer physically, many people will suffer psychologically. So let's take care of each other.
Especially women.
Women in the first place.
And women take care of us. Ukraine has one of the largest percentages of female servicemen in Europe.
That's right.
Mr. President, we are almost running out of time. But I still have 2 questions for you.
Let's talk a little more.
Ignore that.
Your time is very precious. He is very valuable. We met with you in early April. You then talked to Ukrainian TV journalists. I remember asking that there was a victory for you at that moment. You said that reaching the line of demarcation on the 23rd of February before a large-scale invasion could already be considered a victory.
A great victory.
So, and what does victory mean to you today?
I believe that no matter what appetite different segments of our population have, the most valuable thing is to save the lives of the largest number of people and servicemen. These are brave people who are ready to give their lives for our land. I believe that this is our great value and the most valuable treasure, as the result of this invasion has shown. That's why I think so. You don't have to be very greedy at this point. Although this is unfair. Because justice will be when we take everything. Exactly. Our state will return everything. Exactly. Therefore, the most important thing today is to save tens of thousands of people. Because no one gives anything without a fight. There is a territory that they entered in late February and occupied it. And there is an area that they took away a long time ago, a few years ago, and dug in there. They are standing there, sitting, that is, settled deep. Therefore, I believe that it is a great victory for our state to reach the line before the 24th day without unnecessary losses. Yes, I understand. We will not return our territories to the end. It's not that simple. But you and I must look at the price of this war. And the price of each deoccupation. All the same, we will return all the territories later. Everything is absolutely. That's true. We have broken the backbone of the world's largest or strongest army. We have already done that. And by the way, continuing the previous topic, we also did it psychologically. It is very important. They will not be back on their feet in the next few years. But let's not forget that all our servicemen want to live the same way. They just have such a job. Such a difficult job. But they also have families, parents, wives, husbands, children. They, like each of us, rejoice in the sun and each new day. And that is why I want us to understand the value of each of our complex steps and to realize the value of each such step, both forward and backward. Because we are even taking steps back so that there are fewer casualties. All this is very expensive. We pay with the lives of our citizens. Therefore, to enter the line of demarcation before a full-scale invasion will be a victory. But I emphasize that this line is temporary. I am sure there will be a victory. But this first step will show that they did not break us and we defended our land. After that we will move on to the second part. I would like this country to be smart enough to hold the second part at the negotiating table. That's what I hope for. And that the result of this conversation will be final justice. That's all for us. And all Ukrainians understand justice equally. I hope so, but how it will be, no one knows yet.
Mr. President, you said, may our country have enough intelligence. I want to elaborate on this.
Not about ours.
That's exactly what you said.
No, that the mind was in the Russian Federation. In order for them to understand that the second part of our relationship must be resolved at the negotiating table. And our state has enough intelligence, it has enough of everything.
But still I want to ask you this. I have no doubt that victory will be. We believe in her. You know, if you take the example of the Russian Federation, which was part of the Soviet Union, it won in Germany. But, by and large, today she lost, fell into a dictatorship, lost the economy. Russia lost in the end. How can we win but not lose? To win but not to lose? In perspective.
How to win but not lose. If you won, you didn't lose.
Olena means long-term prospects so that we are not proud of our success. We are now in the center of the world.
We are in the center of the world. I would not like to lose our status. We gave a lot for all this: people, energy and time. The latter, of course, is the smallest, but it is still a pity to waste time, because it is the development of the state. And it is very important for everyone to remember the value of these losses. Russia dressed children in Soviet uniforms, in the uniform of the army that defeated Nazism in World War II. They created a cult without realizing the value of this victory. And it turned out like this: inside the Russian Federation, the cult of victory. At the same time, fighting with us, Russia does not understand that the value of victory over Nazism was the united world. Such things are valuable to man. And you see what Russia is doing. They abandoned their people, their soldiers. There were fights, people died. And the Russian Federation did not care about its servicemen. Anyway. I was recently told that they were finally planning to pick up the corpses. You just imagine. When did the war start? They just pretended there were no corpses. Then, when they began to admit losses, they took away a small number of bodies. And now they are just beginning to plan how to pick up the corpses. We connected the UN and the Red Cross and asked them to take away all these mountains of corpses of servicemen. And for us, everyone's life is very important. Therefore, the main thing is not to lose your head and remember how every war, every occupation, every aggressive policy can end. That all these victories of theirs, such as the occupation of Crimea or Donbass, are very temporary. I am sure of that. Absolutely. And in history there will not even be a trace of them. All these territories will return to Ukraine. Because these are our lands. I am sure of that.
They will definitely be back.
Yes, they will definitely be back. I'm sure of it. Because the truth is on our side. Do you know how much respect there is for Ukrainians in the world? Ukraine is fashionable now. There are people who have done nothing for the army or for victory, but still, when foreigners meet them, they are considered heroes. Are you Ukrainian? So? Oh, hero. Can I help you with something? And it is nice that we are greeted not only to help, but first greeted with respect, and only then asked if they can help with something. I think you feel the difference. Respect. Strength, not weakness. I want to download that it is very important for us now not to lose the status. But this is probably the wrong word. This is not a status. Do not lose this modernity. This is a manifestation of Ukraine as a nation. In addition, Ukraine is now united as never before. That is why we cannot lose this war. I wanted to explain to you why. Because this war is not against Russia, but with Russia. These are different things. I hope you understand the difference. So this is not a war against Russia. This is a war with Russia for Ukraine. The truth is with us. We are fighting for our own. It is important. This is a strong position. We are not aggressors, we did not come to another's land. No. I fight for my own, but with you. Now we are at war for independence. And we can't lose it. Because we are fighting again for our freedom and our sovereignty. And this is all ours. This is a very important point, even psychologically. This is what Olena was talking about. Psychologically, people need to understand what is happening. You can't lose for yourself. The attitude to other people's things is appropriate. Even if someone takes them away, you don't care, because they are not yours. But you can't give your things away. And they need to be defended for future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to heroes.